If you don't know me, I'm Leslyn. I'm a therapist by day, and my lives are really just about hanging out, getting to know each other, answering questions, giving back, drinking wine. Kim, I'm currently in separation mediation. Oh, marriage counseling 3 times failed. I'm so sorry to hear that. Kim, in terms of mediation, that's really tough. Take good care of yourself, especially with the holidays coming up, and make sure that you take time to grieve all of those broken dreams, because that can be really hard. Um, yes, it can be very confusing. And one of the things I notice a lot, both in my own life and with my clients, is there's such grief. One of the things that grief for a person who hasn't died does is it sometimes lures us into this sensation that maybe we're wrong. Maybe we moved too quickly. Maybe we didn't try hard enough. Maybe we didn't, all of these things. And I would encourage you to look up the TED Talk from Guy, Guy. I think it's Winch, Winch. He wrote a book called Emotional First Aid, but he has a TED Talk about the breaking up of relationships. And I think it's a fantastic reminder of where we need to kind of create some space in our heads when we go through a breakup. Because when we're lonely, when we're grieving, it's really easy to forget all of the reasons that our relationship has ended, and to kind of hyper focus on those things that drew us to the person in the first time. Another thing that helped me is I realized that for years I was only actually in love with the person that I wanted him to be, not actually the person he was at that point in time. And that was like a moment for me. This realization that the man I was actually married to, I didn't love anything about him. I loved what was in my in my dream of him, in the man I knew he could be, or I thought he could be. And so if that sounds like it resonates for you, that it might be something you can write down. And definitely check out Guy Winch. Yes. And you know what, Kim? I don't know why people change, or I think in my case, I really believe that he showed me who he was from the very beginning, and for all kinds of reasons, I didn't want to believe that that's who he was. I wanted to believe in the best of him. There's probably a part of me that believes that he wanted to be a better him. Um, all that stuff. I have a cold sore starting. Um, so anyway, I think it's important to let that process, and don't forget to look up Guy Winch. You're staying with your mom while you're moving, and it's has your mental health all messed up. So good, Amy. Family is always good for you, good for all of us. Um, you do need to be in your own space. No, man, moderators, go to town there. Thank you. um, yeah. You know, Lauren, remember to just step out and take time for yourselves. Reconnect, re I don't know how much longer you're going to be there, but recommit to the reason that you are where you are. Just mentally, like maybe it would be helpful just to say, you know what, this is temporary. I can do this. We can do this. A little bit like fortifying yourself, right? All of the boundaries that you need to make sure that you put in place, just remind yourself every day. Katie, what self-care do I do? You know what? I'm glad you asked that because I was talking with a client tonight and we were and I'll answer your question, but I want to bring this up because there's a good crew of people in here and I think this is important. I was telling her to remember to do self-care. And I said, self-care isn't just the bubble baths and the walks, excuse me, and all of that. Self-care is paying attention to the things that you say to yourself. It's saying, goodness gracious. Thank you, all of that, guys. Listen, save your blessings until after I've sneezed like 5 times, because that's really what happens here. Self-care is about making sure that the things that you say to yourself are kind, loving statements. Self-care is about forgiving yourself. Self-care can be an internal job. It's not just the external things. And I want to make sure that people pay attention to that. You know, we can take a bubble bath and we can go for a walk and then walk in the door and say, oh my God, you're so effing stupid. That's not self-care. That's not love. So be kind to yourself. That might be one of the most important self-care activities that I can encourage you to do. My favorite form of self-care, though, is art. It's my Zen activity. It's the thing that I do. I have a Instagram that's my art. I make public Facebook posts, like my personal Facebook page. I don't accept friend requests from anybody who isn't a family or a local close friend. So don't be insulted. I just keep that one part of my life super private. But I do put my art on my personal Facebook page and I make those posts public. So you can follow that page and the things that I make public, everybody can see. Self-care for you is forcing yourself to do the things you don't want to do but need to. Oh, that's good. Because at the end of the day, for some people, that it has to start there, right? That we don't want to get up and we force ourselves to do that. And we don't want to do the dishes and we force ourselves to do that. So I think that's important too. But too many people can do things that are loving, but they don't think things that are loving of themselves. And they kind of, if you're thinking bullshit and you're doing kind things, they kind of cancel each other out, right? You have to back up what you do with the way that you think about things. So remember that. Have been lamenting about lack of comments, etc. on TikTok posts and wondered if you're just really boring. Aw, Amy, you know what I've noticed that the views are way down. I mean, I have several posts over the last couple of weeks. I have 117,000 followers, and there are several posts that have less than 1,000 views. That's less than 0.001%. So, Amy, don't take it personally. I honestly don't think for some reason that the algorithm is putting necessarily people out. And in part, I think it's because so many more people are pouring into TikTok. I've noticed so many new people on TikTok. It's hard to really put that into perspective. I honestly don't think that most people, I don't think they get on TikTok to build friendships. I think most people get on TikTok to laugh, and the friendships that come out of that are incidental. Laugh or learn things. I have a ton of recipes saved on TikTok, and the friendships that they build are kind of incidental. So, and not that that's bad. I just think that's the way it is. And if you go on the platform thinking that you're going to build friendships, then it really needs to be because you're creating those interactions. And like anything else, it might take 50 interactions for you to connect with one person. And that's assuming that you've meaningfully interacted. These stories where, I think that's right, Amy. If you really engage and interact with other bell ringers, for example, you may make connections. That's one of the reasons I tell people, if you're looking to build friendships, go to meetup.com, find a group of people who share your interest in your community, and get involved with that group. Is it going to be a win every time? Probably not. I started a meetup right before the pandemic started. There's over 100 people. I probably have only met about 40 of them. And out of that 40, maybe 5 of them I've become somewhat close to. I really enjoy the company of maybe 15. And I would probably say even the 40, but I haven't had an opportunity to really interact with all of them. But my point is that social media is not, it's highly unlikely that you're going to build a friendship with somebody that you meet on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, or any of the other kind of platforms. I think it's just, it's not a realistic place. Yes, some people do, but I think there just has to be a stronger base. And don't take it personally. I think that's what I'm really trying to say is make sure that you have a realistic expectation and have fun. I think I have met lots of really amazing people on this platform. And it would be great if at some point we all got an opportunity to get together and shoot the shit and so on and so forth. I'm super curious, how all of us would intertwine and what kind of commonalities we would find. But the truth of the matter is, I have such a limited amount of time that I barely have enough time to put into the friendships that I have here or have in my life. And this platform is really for me about giving back and helping and answering questions. And as I make connections along the way, that's just an added bonus and an added benefit. Because the 5-minute journal has been something that I recommend to clients a lot. And hi, Tori, thank you. And yes, Tori, I am a therapist, one of many on TikTok. Anyway, the gratitude journal, there's probably not many things that you can do for yourself that are healthier and have long-term benefits than a gratitude practice. I give seminars monthly to people in this retirement community, and almost every single seminar, when I talk about what to do about a particular problem, I talk about mindfulness and gratitude, because those two things, especially when they're practiced in unison, are almost a panacea. They fix, if you use them all the time, they'll fix whatever ails you. He got into her, then started yelling at you and started to talk down on me instead of being a partner and finding a solution. And then the discard and the silent treatment. I'm so sorry. I'm assuming you're talking about your partner. Lit into her and then started yelling at you. Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. You know, it's super easy for me to say to somebody, don't accept that behavior. And I know that it's not always that cut and dry or that black and white for the people I'm talking to. But nobody deserves to be dismissed and then belittled and discarded. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that. And so, you know, I think it's super important to remember that when you're working on an exit plan. Okay, I'll just leave that alone. Good. Because that's what, you know, I think we might have talked about this on Monday night, right? At the end of the day, yeah, Amy, ask away. At the end of the day, you have to be really conscientious about what you're allowing in your life. I'm a big believer, and I don't know if this is a thing. I call it the boomerang theory. And, you know, there's lots of idiot, is it idiot? What am I trying to say? Idiosyms? I know that's not it, but I can't think of the word I'm trying to I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. But this idea that what you put out there comes back at you. What you allow stays, right? That energy, if I allow negative energy into my life, somehow I have to find a way to disperse that negative energy. And, you know, allowing is a crazy word, but at the end of the day, if we don't put a stop to it, if we don't shield ourselves, then at the end, we are kind of allowing that to happen. and I'm going to caveat that with many of us are victims of our circumstances. And it's so I don't want to send the wrong message to people who are stuck because of their circumstances. It's very possible to be a victim of a circumstance. But having an exit plan, setting the stage for getting out of that circumstance is super important. Caitlin, what do you do? What do you have on a husband who always has to be right? Oh. I actually had this conversation with a couple earlier this week. And anybody who always has to be right has a weak ego. Really, it's that habit is somebody who feels invalidated. Maybe they were invalidated and they just didn't have acknowledgement that they knew what they were talking about, or they're not really sure what they're talking about, so they're going to hold a position. It's pretty classic with those under those conditions. I would tell you it's even like psychologically a perfect condition of somebody with a weak ego. Most people would say, oh, they have such a big ego, but it's actually a very weak ego, a representative of a very weak ego and insecurity. I have to demand that you know how much I know to affirm how much I know. People who have a secure ego would say, doesn't matter to me if you think I'm right or not. I know I'm right, and that's enough. And so, the person I was talking to had a pretty weak ego. And, I just said, I think you need to ask yourself, why is it so important to you that you prove to me you know that information? Why is that so important to you? Because at the end of the day, your rightness doesn't make you bigger or better. So think about what it is. It just means that you have information that I didn't have. Do you feel more powerful when you prove that to me? Or do you feel more powerful by having information that I don't have, instead of being humble and maybe seeing it as an opportunity to teach me something in a gentle, kind way? Or maybe even better, letting me find out on my own? That's what I have to say about it. Amy, more of a comment, except wondering how to move past the hurt. Amy, moving past hurt takes time. It takes forgiveness. It takes not internalizing. I mean, at some point, I think there's an acceptance that has to be established that your friendship got to a crossroads or a division in the path, and you each took a different path. And I think maybe one of the hardest things for us to really do is to stop thinking in terms of good and bad and right and wrong. Like, the tendency is, what did I do wrong? Why don't they like me? Why am I bad? What do they, we instantly, some of us instantly kind of go to that place of judgment. And it is judgment. It's judging yourself. It's believing that they're judging you, so that's still judgment. And I want to encourage us, I try to encourage people all the time not to go there. That accept that people in our lives are there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's disappointing if we thought they were seasoned people, but they're only reason people, or if we thought they were lifetime people and they're not. Of course, it's disappointing. So accepting that that's where you are can be super helpful, and not judging it. And, for people who have a lot of faith, I think being able to trust that this idea that there's some bigger understanding of the world than you have the capacity to have in that moment is super helpful. I've shared many, many times before that when Rocky died, when Harlan died, even when my sister was screwing with my husband, I was able to get to this point where I thought, okay, this is where we are. This is what's happening. This is what has happened. And I have two choices. I can accept it and move forward from this space. This is my reality. Or I can continue to wish that things were the way they used to be. And every time I do that, I'm not accepting what's real right now. And so once I start accepting what's real right now, which is the only way forward, then I can let the sadness and the disappointment of that dissipate. Like it's sprinkled all over the past, and it's not necessarily on the path in front of me. It's here. So making a choice to accept what's real in your life right now is a huge step in the healing process of any pain. And I think if you have any kind of faith, you need to rely on the understanding that there's perhaps something bigger at play. That person's value in your life has ended. I don't get to know why. Maybe you don't get to know why. But trusting that there just simply isn't any value to that relationship anymore, I think became very helpful to me. And it allowed me to move on to the next relationship that would provide value, whatever that might be. And you never know. You don't know what's around the corner. You have to trust that the next relationship, and there will be one, that the next relationship will be there for either a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Turn around, look out the windshield, and go forward. Because when we simply sit back and look in the rearview mirror, we're not driving. Hello, Inspired. When someone blurts their opinion in a passive-aggressive manner, how do you manage the situation? Like this. That's one way to look at it. That's a possibility. Interesting idea. I think anytime somebody is injecting their opinion in a way that wasn't asked for, the kindest thing you can do is just to acknowledge it without giving it weight. That's one way to look at it. It's just that easy. Or there's an idea. I suspect that's a possibility. It's just acknowledging the possibility. I do think it's important. I think many of us need to get better at being able to not shut people down just because they gave us unwanted advice. And I think, Lauren, that's what I'm talking about, right? Not giving so much weight to the opinions of others. I mean, first of all, if someone doesn't know you, their opinion has no seated value. Try to really get that. If they don't know you, their opinion is completely and ultimately just based on who they are. It has nothing to do with you. So the fact that you give it weight is rather ludicrous. I hope that makes sense. If they do know you, then I think that you can take it into consideration just in any of the ways that I said. Interesting. I'll think about that. Or that's one way to look at it. You can also, if it's a really close person, say, thank you, but I'm not soliciting advice. Just if it's a close person, just put it right where it is. Thank you, but I'm just not soliciting advice. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if the person doesn't know you, their opinion of you has no value. And I really need you to hear the literalness of that statement. It's literal. In that case, I'm being very literal. There's no value. If you don't know me, your opinion is based on you, not on me. Because if you don't know me, there's no information for you to have to offer something substantive, right? It's really quite simple in that regard. If you do know me and you have an opinion, hello, proud to be, welcome. This is a good live to be your first. Whoops. If you do know me and I haven't asked for your opinion, I'm not going to shut you down necessarily, but I'm going to say thank you for that. Especially if I admire you, I may say, oh, thank you for that. But if hello, Price, I may not remember that. You may have to, proud Price. Maybe I will remember. If you do know me and I value your opinion and I'm seeking advice, I'm going to listen. If I'm not, I'm going to say thank you so much, but I'm not actually asking. I'm going to still be kind about it, but I'm also going to let people know that I'm not talking because I'm soliciting advice. I taught my kids to do that straight up because as a therapist, I'm in the habit of giving advice. And with my family, I had to learn to say, are you asking? Are you asking for advice? Because I would just give it. And I had to give everybody kind of permission to tell me I'm not asking for advice. And I would just say, great, I'll just listen. And I personally think that that's a very powerful tool, especially with family members. But you kind of have to give each other permission. Otherwise, somebody can get defensive and then that doesn't work. You can set a boundary out loud, stick carry it around in your head. Yeah. And Lauren, I'm going to say, just let go. Like, if you can, I guess there's a couple of ways that I think about this. Vexed, I will answer that for sure. Hold on a sec. I'm going to say that I think it helps if you say, gosh, I know they mean well. And try to remember, especially if it's somebody that loves you, right? Just know that they mean well. But I'm still going to say, try not to internalize. Some people give advice because they're afraid, right? They're afraid. They have a hang up. They have anxiety, and they're going to give you advice they're going to give you advice to alleviate their anxiety. And so I think sometimes you have to pay attention to really what's happening and see it for what it is. And if it helps you to give me advice, I'm just going to let it kind of roll over me. And do you feel better now? And I probably have just even said that. Do you feel better now? Especially if it's just advice that they know I'm not taking. All right, anxiety, please. I see a therapist, but I'm struggling with health-related PTSD. So, PTSD is hard, and I'm not a trauma specialist, but I've had a significant amount of trauma in my life. Most of it small t, one or two, one or two big T things. I think the key, and I'm going to say this with the caveat that I am not a trauma specialist, okay? So, if I'm triggering you, please just log off, and you can DM me and say you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But having been through trauma, I'm going to come at it from that perspective. Like the other side, having the education, at least the psychology education. One of the things that's happening in grief research right now is David Kessler, who worked with very, very closely with Kubler-Ross, has actually added a sixth stage of a sixth stage of grief, and it's meaning making. And in my life, one of the ways that I have tried to manage trauma is to find some meaning that I was able to garner from having had the experience. Now, I see all kinds of problems with this when it comes to sexual assault, physical abuse, and I know that it could be maybe even an absurdity, but I'm going to stand by that for some traumas, finding a way to embody meaning in at least what you learned about yourself from the experience might be a way to process some of that. And I say that because a lot of what we experience in trauma is grief for the life we're not going to get to live because now we have all this pain, for the thing that trauma stole from us, whether it was our dignity or our self-respect. I mean, all kinds of things. And sometimes I think we have to grieve that thing that we lost in the trauma. I came out of my marriage, my second marriage, with a tremendous amount of self-loathing. Yes, Michelle, our trust. I'll say I came out of my second marriage with a lot of self-loathing, and it's kind of a long story, but at the end of the day, I was so angry that I had allowed those events to exist in my life. And there was a big part of my recovery process that dealt with forgiveness, right? For grief for the loss of the dream, grief for the loss of the self-respect. Trust, I think, is a big one. So thank you for that, Michelle. I think that grieving the trust you lost, I've had clients in the past that have been sexually assaulted and then unwilling to leave their house or unwilling to walk across a campus or unwilling to let a man touch them. And I think that grief for trust is probably a big part of what they might have felt. So, Michelle, I'll answer your question in a second. So baking, I would say that sadness often comes out in anger. I believe that anger is a secondary emotion. So when we don't know what to do with that underlying emotion, in your example, sadness, we can get very, very angry. Hey, Dimples, how are you? We can get super angry because we don't know what to do with these other emotions. So, and Michelle, does grief come in stages? Does meaning making come in stages? Probably. I mean, yes, technically grief comes in stages, but they're not linear. There's no prerequisite or requirement to experience all the stages. You know, I talk a little bit here and there about Viktor Frankl, and he's the concentration camp survivor who came to the U.S. and wrote Man's Search for Meaning, I think that's it, Man's Search for Meaning. And I always say, first of all, that kind of trauma, if he can survive that, I can probably survive anything in my life. But what he did was he found meaning in that experience. So there he is in a concentration camp, able to discover meaning. And you have to read the book if you're confused. But I think that, and I don't know if David Kessler even refers to that in his work, but I personally, by finding meaning, believe that I developed an ability to trust in kind of this global sense. And when I remember to use that coping skill, it's a little bit like magic. You know, it's like, remember, Leslyn, you believe that everything happens for a reason. And I actually feel that I get to say that. You know, some people don't have enough trauma in their life to really put that into perspective. And maybe I'm just being super entitled when I say that. I'd be open to a conversation about it, but I think instantly of the clients I've worked with who've been sexually assaulted or have lost late-term babies or have lost a child, and I think to myself, how the hell do you make meaning out of that when you're the person who's been traumatized? I think that I would still be able to stand by what I'm saying, but of course I haven't had those experiences, since I'm not 100% sure. But I think so. I don't know. I feel like I'm going on a tangent now. Right. Hi, Ann Grace. He prescribed meaning for his patients as a psychiatrist. I know. And so it's so interesting to me that the stages of grief are just now, like Kessler's work is relatively new in the last 10-15 years. And it's so interesting to me that they're just now really talking about meaning in grief work. On good heavens, Rocky died in 1985, and in 1985 I was looking for meaning to make sense out of his death. And when I found it, and that's a weird thing to say, but when I decided on the meaning, a meaning or a possible meaning, I had peace. And it didn't take away the pain. Well, I guess it did. It kind of mitigated the pain, right? Peace mitigated the pain. You don't trust yourself to pick another man. You know, Jukebox, I totally get that. I was talking about picking another man. Listen, I get that. After my marriage, I was never going to get involved in another relationship. And then I met Harlan and I was scared to death. But we had 10 amazing years. And, you know, I thought he was going to be my forever person, but the universe had other plans, you know. And I look back today and the meaning that I have, like it's very easy to get angry. Like, why did I go through all that other bullshit just to meet a man that was going to die 10 years later? Why? And I could get lost and I could get sucked into that why really, really strongly. I promise you I could. But I believe that every event has meaning, that I can learn something about myself or about the world from every single event. Maybe it didn't happen for a reason, but in the experience, there's something for me to learn. And I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that Harlan was brought into my life to be a mitigator, if you will, for the pain of dealing with my divorce, because my narcissistic ex just injected himself into the picture for years and years and years as our children grew up. And it was just so absurd, truly absurd. And of course, you know, my sister's in the background all that time. And I think Harlan literally was just sent into my life to mitigate that experience for me. And when I say mitigated, I mean like he acted like a little bit of a sponge between Bill and me. And he absorbed some of that energy so that it didn't hurl over me. Not that he ever got in the middle, except just kind of metaphorically stood there. I also think he was here so that he could be a positive example to my girls because their dad was not. And he was with me long enough to transition with me out of the home where I raised our kids into this place, which is very comfortable it was just very comfortable for the two of us and now just me. And when we were settled, he got sick. I mean, literally, we were here a year when his cancer was discovered. A year. The timing of that, it feels so coincidental. And I don't believe in coincidences. And so every time I think about his presence in my life, I have nothing but gratitude. Like literally, I believe he was sent to take care of me. And what's really crazy is that for so many years, there was a part of me that just was so tired for having to take care of myself. Now I'm going to get all emotional because I just really believe that. And why did he die? Because his job was done. It was a lot like Clancy, you know, in It's a Wonderful Life. Like, his job was done and he left. And, you know, I can be sorry that he is gone, or I can be so freaking grateful that he was here. And whichever choice I make to sit in is going to significantly impact the way I wake up each morning. And so gratitude for the fact that he was here just feels better. And that's what I mean about meaning making. I can tell you, I can also have gratitude for my marriage, which ended in shit. Where, you know, I was married to a narcissistic alcoholic who was a serial cheater. And I mean, most of you know the story. So why am I grateful for that? First of all, I have 3 amazing daughters. They are such amazing human beings. I can't imagine my life without them. Secondly, it forced me to face my childhood trauma, which made me a better woman, which woke me up, if you will, which sent me back to school, motivated me to become a therapist, and now I help people. And how the hell can I be sad about that? So, even that effed up experience, I have the ability to say, here is the meaning that came from that experience. And now it's palatable. And to be quite honest, I would do it all over again if it led me to this same spot. And that's the secret. If there's a secret sauce, that's the secret. And I got on that whole tangent because I was talking to Jukebox about picking another man. You have no idea. If another man comes into your life, trust that the universe has your back. Try to trust that there is a meaning, or will be a meaning, for that encounter. And I would also encourage you, just because love hurts, don't throw it away. Every single time anybody ever loves or is vulnerable enough to love, it means that they're going to risk loss. And that's just the way it is. Is it possible to fall in love with your therapist without it being transference? Probably. I know I'm a therapist and I'm supposed to have a better handle on this, but I never dove deep into understanding transference and countertransference. I know the basics. And I actually chose a psychodynamic supervisor when I was getting licensed because I wanted to understand psychodynamic theory better. But our supervision really was much more about my caseload than it was about trying to understand the philosophical orientation of working with those clients. So certainly when a therapist is positioning themselves to reflect the relationship characteristics of the healing that needs to be done, right? That's the idea behind transference and countertransference. Certainly you create a space where falling in love can happen, but they're not actually falling in love with the therapist. They're falling in love with that persona that the therapist is generating back. They're falling in love with that connection that the therapist is attempting to assimilate, right? But I do think that if a therapist shares a lot, crosses boundaries, maybe gets, drops the boundary and gets too emotional, I think that there definitely could be a more authentic connection that would open the door for feelings to exist. I had a gentleman I worked with through his divorce years ago, and I remember one day he said, what I really want to do is I just want to find a woman like you. Now Harlan was very much alive and I was happy, and I kind of laughed it off and said, well, thank you so much for that compliment. I don't know any single women like me. And we just kind of, and it was light, and it wasn't uncomfortable. I didn't read anything into it other than maybe he was just saying, I admire the qualities that you have. So I think that answers your question And I would say, probably. Joni, do I mind sharing how you met your wonder husband? So, my wonderful husband. So, are you talking about my first one or Harlan? Hello, Keisha. My first one was my Prince Charming that I talk about from time to time. He was a blind date when I was for my 21st, and a present technically for my 21st birthday. Harlan, I met in 2007 on Match.com. We met online. Yeah. And it was love at first date, or it was at least I just thought he was so much fun on our first date, and I just wanted to hang out with him. And I just thought we would have so much fun together, and we did. And we just kept hanging out and kept hanging out. His birthday was Christmas Day, and so we met on December 7th. And we'd been talking for a couple of weeks going up to that. We met on December 7th, and on Christmas Day, I invited him over that night for birthday cake. And then we really kind of went right on through. And by the end of August, he went on vacation with us. Well, my brother got married in Puerto Rico, and he went with us. And yeah, after that, we couldn't live together because I was collecting too much alimony. But we lived very close to each other and shared the bulk of our lives together for 10 years. So yeah, I was the lucky girl. But I'm super enjoying not being connected. Thank you, Anne. I am really enjoying not being connected at the moment. I'm loving just paying attention to me. My family is growing. My kids are having babies. My business is growing, and I love having the freedom to kind of just go and do whatever the heck I want. And I'm loving life right now in that regard. I don't know. I'm never going to say never, because I don't know what the world will offer me. It's really funny. I've had easily a dozen new followers this week that were very, very attractive older men. But when I click on their links, there's like 3 pictures, 10 followers, and I think they're all fake accounts, or troll accounts. And it just cracks me up that these trolls think that we're so weak that we're going to swoon over a good-looking dude just because they're a good-looking dude. Hi, Whimsy, how are you? It just cracks me up. And I just, I don't know. What are they? 20-year-old kids sitting in a sweatshop someplace in, I don't know. I don't want to be sarcastic, but some dark room someplace, searching the internet for pictures of attractive people. Rose, don't answer. Don't answer. You're not going to meet the love of your life on TikTok. Now, I know that there are 3 or 4 people, maybe more, that have. And Rose, I am sure you're a delightful person, and I don't mean to in any way disparage the idea that you're worthy Of course, you're worthy. I just think that you're so worthy that you can join a meetup group or a church group or a group at the library and find a very reliable human being that's not catfish. Any thoughts on overcoming disorganized attachment? I think disorganized attachment can be rooted in feelings of unworthiness, right? And we have these, it's kind of like this anxious attachment. I don't know if they're really going to stay. It's this idea that I have to attach onto somebody because I feel insecure. So I would say ego strengthening. I would say self-esteem. It's always about working on you. If you haven't read the book Attached, read that book. It really covers all of the attachment styles well and has so many examples of relationships. And it may be a little bit of an eye-opener about like specific behaviors and what not to do. I'm trying to think who wrote that. Let's see. I have it in my Audible library. Someplace. So many books. And this is so funny because it's a combination of novels, dystopian stuff, self-help stuff, the book Self-Esteem by Matthew McKay and Patrick Fanning, excellent. I believe it also has a workbook. Self-Esteem 3rd edition. Attached by Amir Levine, Amir Levine. So I would work on those two things. You know, self-esteem, really understand the attachment and the different styles so you don't just go from a frying pan and, you know, from the fire into the frying pan. Yeah. It always starts, you guys, always starts with becoming the best version of yourself. And it means asking questions and getting curious and not having any judgment. Keisha, let's check in on Monday night and we'll talk about disorganized attachment. You can probably Google it. The book Attached that I just talked about is a great resource for attachment disorder. Have a great weekend and we'll see you. Bye, guys.